Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm bringing you a look inspired by the new film Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. One of the key messages in the book and the film is that it's okay to be different and we should all embrace our peculiarities. That's what makes you, you, and that's definitely something I've tried to encourage on this channel, and I know a lot of you guys relate to.
We're what's known in common parlance as peculiar.
Claire, why aren't you eating?
She's embarrassed in front of Jake.
Don't be.
The character I was inspired by today is Enoch. He's one of my favourite characters from the book, and his peculiarity is to give life to inanimate dead things like people, animals, dolls. He makes these little homunculi, and I remember in the book he takes bits from loads of different dolls and then puts them together. So that's where I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to try to turn myself into one of his creepy little homunculus dolls. To save time, I've already applied a bald cap. This is just a regular latex bald cap you can get from costume shops. They're okay, but they don't tend to fit me properly because my peculiarity is the size of my massive head. So we're all bald cap in the front and then all party in the back, but you can always hide that. You can always hide extra hair with your costume usually, but just try to ignore it for this video. Next up, I'm going to block out my brows using a regular glue stick. This stuff gets goopy when it comes into contact with water, so don't worry about it pulling out your eyebrows or anything. It's going to come off pretty easily. You want to go the opposite way to the way your brows grow and then flatten them either upwards or down. Just don't flatten it over the rest of the brows or you're still going to get a bunch of texture there. So to make a little eye prosthetic here, I used a ping pong ball, some nail polishers, and sculpt gel. So I started by cutting a ping pong ball in half, and please be safe if you try this at home. So once I cut them in half, I used a bit of clay to attach one of them to a pencil so that I could sit it in a pot and just easily move it around. You can use like blue tack or whatever, but for some reason I don't have any. Next, I painted the whole thing with white nail polish. The first time I did this, it didn't look quite this crisp, so I'm really glad I tried it again because this time it turned out really well. Once that's dry, you want to add an iris. I just googled doll eye and this was one of the first pictures that came up. I scaled it down to 2.5 centimeters, and you want to try print this on thin, cheap paper. That way it's going to be a bit more flexible when the glue's on there, so it'll mold to the shape of the ball a lot better. I also made 4 little cuts towards the pupil, and this is going to help with it sitting properly as well. Next, I stick it on the center with just a regular glue stick. You don't want to use anything that's too wet, like PVA or something, or the paper will get too wet and the ink will run. Once that's dried, you want to put a blob of black nail polish in the center for the pupil. It took forever to dry because I applied it super thick, but apparently if you put it in the freezer that can speed up the drying time, but I just left mine overnight so I have no idea if it helped. Then I finished off with a clear top coat. And this is clear, it just looked purple in the bottle. I don't know why. So you can't really just go ahead now and stick this onto your skin. It's not going to work, there's no back to it. Also, you wouldn't want to attach it directly onto your mobile lid anyway. So what I'm going to do is make a little base that goes over the entire eye, and I can anchor it around the eye instead, and it's going to be a lot safer. So I mixed equal parts of A and B together on a palette, making sure to wipe my little palette knife off so I didn't cross-contaminate, since when they mix they harden and you don't want a tin full of random useless product. I also added a bit of cream grease paint as well, just so you guys can actually see what I'm doing on my face cast, because I did this before and it was like see-through, so you couldn't see what I was doing, so there you go, you don't need to do this. I mean, you can if you want, it might make painting a bit easier, but it's not necessary. So after applying Vaseline as a release, I applied my mixture over the eye and made my little base. I have to give a shout out here to Gobbly Starling and a Shot Out Eye tutorial for helping me out here, since I've never tried anything like this before. It can be really intimidating to try something new, especially when you're filming it and you have a deadline, but I watched a video and I came away feeling confident enough to try it myself, so thank you, Angie. So I tapered out the edges as best as I could. I blended them out with IPA, isopropyl alcohol, then I added some skin texture in there with a textured sponge. Now to add the eyeball, I put some PVA just on the inside of the eyeball. I don't know how to say that without it sounding weird. Then I added some cotton wool in there so the eyeball would kind of have a back for me to stick it onto the piece. I added some more of the sculpt gel to the base, and then I placed the eyeball right on top. I also went back in around the edges just to hide any gaps that might have been there. Again, just blending with the alcohol and then texturizing it with the sponge. Then, like I said, it's going to dry pretty quickly, and then you can just lift it off the cast, just put a palette knife under an edge, and then we can apply it to our face. So to apply this guy, I'm going to use Pros-Aide adhesive, and I'm applying this around my eye, avoiding the lid space and my eyelashes. You want to make sure the area you apply the glue is clean of any makeup and oils. You can use IPA to quickly wipe over that area, which I completely forgot to do, and my little eye thing was peeling off by the end of filming, so please bear that in mind. Then you want to wait for that glue to dry, it'll turn clear, and then you can just pop the eyeball guy on there. You want to go ahead and glue underneath those edges as well when everything is stuck down. I blended out those edges again with the Pros-Aide, and then once everything was dry, I went over with a touch of translucent powder. Next, I'm taking a cream grease paint and I'm covering everything, the bald cap, my face, my neck, and since this is a doll, I'm just going to do a flat colour and I'm not going to break it up with any other skin tones or anything. It's like the easiest, laziest cover up ever. Then again with that powder, I'm going to go ahead and set all of that in place. And then I can add more layers on top of that if I need to, and it's not going to pull up the colour that I've just applied. Ideally you would want to set it with a big powder puff, but I only have ones that I use for my regular makeup and I didn't want to get them messy, so I just use a brush, but I was just careful not to get any brush marks in there. To hide those brows a little bit better, I went over with a green concealer. You can use a green grease paint or whatever you have as well. Then again, you want to set that, go over with the cream colour, and then set that with the powder as well. Next, I'm outlining a chunk of head on the top here, I guess, and I'm filling that in with a slightly different colour, so it looks like it's part of a different doll that's been popped on top there. Next, I'm going to move on to the eye and deal with that part of the head later. I just kind of wanted to visualize what was happening, so I just added that in there. Here, I'm going to add some depth around the eye, starting with a brown paint. I'm applying it with a liner brush to begin with, and then blending out with a bigger, fluffier brush. I think this is a pencil brush. I roughly outlined the empty socket on the other eye as well. Then I'm going back in on the other eye with a black paint, and I'm just blending that out into the brown that I applied before, leaving some of that brown peeking out at the edges. You could also apply black first and then brown around the edges, just either way. So my initial concept for this look was more on the side of realism, but I realised at this point that my depth perception and stuff was screwed because I had one eye covered up. So I'd draw a line and then I'd lift the brush and then try to place it back in the same place, and I'd be like a few millimeters off, so I knew I wouldn't be able to achieve a super neat and realistic effect this time. So I decided to mix it up a bit and try to stylize it a bit and make it look a bit more cartoony, but I really like how it turned out. So here I started adding some cracks, but I realised that now would be a good time to add some shading to make my face look a bit more baby and doll-like. I'm going to take this eyeshadow and first go underneath my lip to make it look a bit more full and pouty. Then I'm going to try and make my nose look a little bit smaller and more button-like too. Dolls often don't have a really pronounced nose bridge, they just kind of have a nose tip coming out of nowhere, and I guess babies do too actually. So leaving that area flat, just that flat cream colour instead of adding shading there, and just focusing the shading on the nose tip will hopefully reflect that idea. Next, I'm going to enhance my cheeks and try and make them look fuller. So you can add shading down here from the sides of the nostrils and then go underneath the cheeks. And you can also do a little arc on the top of the cheek as well, and this is going to make them look rounder. Also, from looking at a reference photo of a pot doll, they often have the corners of the mouths like downturned. They have pouty little mouths. So you can add a little shading here as well, and that is actually going to make your face look a tad fuller too. Then finally, I'm shaving down my Ian Somerhalder jawline to make it a little bit rounder, although it's impossible. Look at it, it's a right angle. Next, I decided to add some corally lipstick to the cheeks as a blush, since it'll have a nice sheen to it like a porcelain doll. I'm applying the same corally colour that I used on my cheeks, on my lips as well. Then I blotted it and applied a lighter lip gloss around the edges, Doll lips often have that really glossy look to them, so that's why I went glossy. I also added a bit of dark pink in the center as well, just to give the illusion of depth and shape. Finally, getting back to those eyes and the cracks, I started to add more around the socket with face paint this time instead of the grease paint because it's a wet product, so you get those nice sharp edges a lot easier. Liquid liner would also work. I'm also going to start adding random dirty patches as well, just with some brown eyeshadows and a textured sponge, the same one I used before to add the skin texture. I also think I had a bit of Vaseline on there as well, which helped, so sure, I don't know how it got there, but thanks. Random Vaseline, I guess. It worked out. On the other eye, I wanted it to look like there was an empty socket there, so first I outlined the socket with black. Just like on the other eye, I faded the edges to a brown to add some depth. And I'm going to deal with the eyelid later. I'm not just going to leave it like that, don't worry. So I was really liking the darkness of the black and the contrast it gave, so I wanted to add that into the look somewhere else as well. So I decided to add it just on the outline of the skull on the top here. It's not a skull, it's a baby head. I blended the edges a little bit with brown again as well, and I just added some more dirt and just played around with it until I was happy with how it looked. It's always hard for me with these character looks to do something that isn't realistic and isn't like perfectly blended and everything like that because I am a perfectionist, you guys know it. But I think this patchiness and almost messy kind of blending and stuff kind of just lends itself to a style, so I don't know, I quite like it. Next I went ahead and just added a bunch of cracks just randomly all around, again just using the wet face paint. Then we're almost done. I'm going back to the eyes, or eye, I guess. I added some black shadow to the lid, and I added some black paint just around the edges to make them sharp and neaten things up a bit. Then finally I added some regular sellotape over the edges where the two head bits, I don't know what to call them, skull, baby head bits, oh god, it's getting worse. So just where those two meet, like the two edges, like it was holding the two pieces together. But then that's it. The film is out on the 29th of September, so until then, let me know what you guys think of this video, and make sure you use #StayPeculiar to share your recreations or your own inspired looks, or simply your peculiarity. As always, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Stay peculiar, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.